welcome to another episode of Calling Old Hollywood. I'm your host.
What's my name?
Kat Lively. I'm happy. I think I've found my place. Thank you guys so much for coming out to the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. It's great to see you all here. I'm Kat Lively, host of the Calling Old Hollywood podcast, and I am here to speak to a couple people you might be fans of.
Yeah!
We've got JIMMIE Farr, Bob Eubanks, LORETTA SWIT, and JIMMIE WALKER. We are so excited to have you all here.
Dynamite!
This is the 50th anniversary of MASH this Saturday. We have JIMMIE WALKER, Good Times.
Dynamite!
Bob Eubanks, you hosted the Newlywed Game, but you've also got quite some music history.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. Does it work? Yeah. I'm the only living person to have produced a Beatle concert all 3 years they toured. And
wow.
That was fun time. And then very quickly, I produced all of Merle Haggard's concerts for 10 years, managed the career of Dolly Parton and Barbara Mandrell, and got into television production and did some of that too. And I've just had a wonderful career, and I'm very happy to be here too.
There's a story about the first Beatles concert that you put on. You want to share that about your house?
Well, yeah, I was working at a radio station there in Los Angeles, KRLA, and I was making $12,500 a year. And when the Beatles decided they wanted to tour America, they wanted $25,000 down. And so I walked into a bank in Woodland Hills, California, and the guy asked me to leave. He thought I was crazy because I told him I wanted to do it for the Beatles. And anywho, yeah, it's the first time I've had to deal with a microphone. Anywho, I borrowed $25,000 on my house and presented the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl 1964. And this microphone is the same age as I am. See what I mean? Anywho, did the Beatles at Hollywood Bowl 1964, 65, and then Dodger Stadium in 1966. And that was the beginning of a whole English migration. After the Beatles came here and they were so successful, and I did the Rolling Stones, but Jagger and I couldn't get along very well. And I did every major rock and roll act, I guess. And then I got out of rock and roll, went into country music. So,
Can you talk into the mic, please?
1, 2, 6, 4. So anyway, it's awfully nice to be here, and I'm I'm so pleased to be with my friends, and thank you for coming.
JIMMIE and LORETTA, since this is the first 50th anniversary of MASH Saturday, I want to talk about how you both got casted. How did this all begin for you?
Go ahead. You were there before me.
That's true. Alan and I are the survivors. We were in the pilot and Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen. Oh, I know. But very minutes afterwards, this young man came on for a day player. That's the category. His name was Jamie Farr. And he came for one day and stayed for 11 years. He has beloved, like I cannot begin to tell you. They stop him in airports and say, "You're a living legend." He calls me up, "Swit, I'm a living legend."
You know,
He
Loretta
is,
always
and-
hated me because I had better wardrobe than
It's
she
true.
did.
Speaking of,
I
there's-
started, my eyes went green, my hair went green. I mean, we did a red show because we were all turning green. But I don't think I have a moment in those 11 years that wasn't filled with
Could I ask you a question?
creativity. Not now, I'm talking.
Oh,
I had a scene with
Harry Morgan used to have that same problem with.
I had a scene with Harry Morgan where he was trying to tell me I can't go around punching people out. The Houlihan was always, and he was trying to tell me that was my ethnic background and, drinking. And said, you can't go out. And I was trying to explain why I was knocking those people out. And he wouldn't let me talk. And finally I said, "I'm talking." And he said, "Go right ahead." He was so terrified that I'd punch him out. But truly, it was a blessed time. We were gifted, we were happy, and I think that poured over into your viewing. You saw how loving and happy we were. It was such a humanity-filled show. It had everything, and even when we made you cry, and we did, it was a good cry. It was a bad good, And so I still have my family with me, the survivors, Jamie and I, Alan, Mike, and Gary, and peripherally, Jeff Maxwell.
And Alan.
No, I said Alan, Jamie. Did you hear me? I do a
I
single,
have one question. I would like you to ask the question that you wanted to ask her.
Didn't you guys go on strike?
Yeah,
On
the
the set,
secretaries
and
went
tell
out
them
once.
why.
Yeah, the secretaries at Fox went out. They needed a raise badly. And so we all got up and said, "I don't feel very well. I think I'm going to go home and I'll call you if I feel better tomorrow. And we'll see how the secretaries do. And then we'll come back in." And they got their rise. And that was this group, there were, actually, remember what Harry said, when we were saying goodbye to everybody, the last wrap, we finished the series. And we were talking to the press, and Harry, we nearly wept. He said, "I've done 7 or 8 series, and there were jobs. You left, and that was it. It was over, and you moved on." And he said, "But not with this group. Not with this family." He said, "This was so very special." And it was hard to explain, but you had to be there, and we were. so we really, it was a wonderful way to spend that time with those very special people.
Jimmie Walker. Didn't you and I work together?
Many, many times. But I don't think Jamie remembers. We did some movies together.
Home
and
Alone 2?
Billions of game shows. Billions.
Jimmie, how did you get started? You've got into comedy, but you're still a comedian.
Yes, I hope so.
Stephanie, how did that all start for you? What was it that brought you to showbiz, that brought you to acting?
Acting, well, I'm not an actor. I'm a comic. So that's what I do. I'm strictly a stand-up comic. Nothing to do with the acting racket at all. I don't have anything to do with it. I think, actors, you do all well. But basically a comic, and I started at the Improv, where you guys probably have heard of the Improv.
Yes.
I started really on what we call the Chitlin circuit, which doesn't have anything to do with folks here. Bob says he did a lot of concerts, but we did the Chitlin circuit, which was, I don't really want to get to the heaviness of it all, but those are all black theaters. And I did a ton of those things with people like the Temptations and Gladys Knight and the Four Tops and all that stuff like that. So we worked there, which is, again, strictly for black audiences. So I was the youngest MC on the Chitlin circuit at 17. people like Red Fox, Flip Wilson, Mantan Moreland, Pygmy Markham, all those kind of people on that. So I did that. And then my friend said to me, if you want to make real money, because Moms Mabley and Red Fox were the only really big time comedians, along with secondary people like Richard Pryor, secondary along with me. They said, you should go downtown and work in the Village. So I worked in the Village, and that's when me, Richard Pryor, our class was me, Richard Pryor, Bette Midler, Liza Minnelli, Richard Lewis, David Brenner. We were all, Andy Kaufman, we were all at the same time. And we were like, that was our class of guys, along with writers like Woody Allen, Alan Hugo, who did Blazing Saddles, all those kind of guys like that. And so I did that, and we had a comedy team called Edmonds and Curly. There's two comedy teams at the time, Stiller, Merritt, Edmonds and Curly. Edmonds and Curly said to me, look, man, we're doing a thing for TV shows called warm-ups. That's where a guy comes out before something like this and gets the crowd riled up, whatever he does, whatever. Riled up. They said, we want you to do, would you like to do a warm-up for a TV show? And I went, I don't even know what a warm-up is, I have no idea. And they said, well, they pay $750. I said, I'm in. I'm in. So I did a warm-up for a show called Carlucci's Department, which was Candy Azar, Jose Perez, Renee Bologna, Joe Montana. It was a great idea that never worked for some reason. It was about unemployment office. Anyway, it was great. It was like Night Court came later, where they had sharp cuts and stuff like that. That didn't happen. So anyway, I did this, and a girl named Pat Kirkland, who was the talent girl from Tanya, says, hey man, you're very funny. Now, this is the sad part. I know everybody's been praising show business. People lie a lot in this business. This is a lying, low-life business. You think you have friends, you have no friends. So they said, you're very funny. We would love for you to do a TV show in Los Angeles. Now, I've done a TV show with Rowan and Martin. I did the last couple of Laugh-Ins, which Dan Rowan, for some reason, was a big fan of mine. And he flew me out to do the last couple of shows, and Greg Garrison, who's the director, said, when I came in, he said, why are you here? And I said, I'm here because Dan Rowan said I should be. He says, Dan Rowan didn't tell me nothing. I'm using it. He didn't tell me nothing about this. So he said, how the hell does this happen? They bring on some guy that I never heard of. So I did my little skit, and I was able to get a couple of laughs. And Greg Garrison, who's the producer, says, you know, I don't think you're funny, but a lot of people like you. He says, so I guess you're on the show. So I was on the show, and that was the first time I was in Hollywood. Then when I did the things for Edmonds and Curly, they flew me out to the left coast, and none of us drove. Brenner, Landisburg, Bette, Woody, nobody drove. When you live in Los Angeles, you must, it's like not having a car here. You must have a car. So Landisburg, who was at that time, this shows you how far back it goes, he was a sketch player on the Bobby Darin show. So I said, pick me up, man. I'm coming into Los Angeles. So not only did he not know how to drive, he got a car and he got a stick shift. For a guy that can't drive, to get a stick shift is the worst possible move.
In Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles. So Norman Lear sends a limo for me, but Landisburg has like a 1947 something. So I said, I'm riding with Landisburg. He's my friend. He's my friend. I'm riding with him. So they said, no limo? I said, no, I'm with Landisburg. So we're bumping down La Cienega because he doesn't know how to shift or do anything like that. And I said, we got to work out. do our comedy thing. So we went to the store, the comedy store. I went from the Improv to the Comedy Store, and we were doing shows. And I go back to what I was doing with Carlucci's apartment. When Pat Kirkland said, "You're on the show," I thought she was a liar. But I was no big deal. People lie all the time. She said, "We gotta send contracts to you." So you don't even give people your address or your phone number. He said, "Just call me at the Improv." So I get to the Improv, Louis the Cook's there, and he's all angry. He says, "You got lots of mail here, man." I go, "What's that?" Because I used to get letters because people see show, they like the show, whatever. So I got a thing, it was a contract. At the end of the bar every night, we had a guy named Kenny the Drunk, who was a lawyer, okay? And I said to Kenny the Drunk, I said, "What is this?" He said, "It's a contract." I said, "Is it good?" He says, "I think it's good." So I picked his head up off the bar, and he called me from the Republic, and he said, "Have him sign this." So I signed it, and then what happened was, I went on the road. I was on the road with Evans and Crowley and a singer named Michael Smith, who had a big hit record called Blue It and Blue. I'm blue it and blue, sad and sad, this is the worst thing that I have, whatever the... Anyway, so we were on the road in North Dakota, because I didn't believe that this thing was going to happen. If I had half the jobs that people promised me, I would not even have time to be here today. Because people always promise, "We got this and we love you there." And then there's only the real people who go, "You stink, you suck, I never liked you. I don't understand what the big to-do is about. Why is everybody saying this?" Anyway, so I get a call in Fargo, North Dakota with Michael W. Smith. And he says, I said, "Who's on the phone?" He said, "It's J.D. Joe from Tandem Productions." And Tandem Productions is Norman Lear's thing. He said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Fargo, North Dakota, doing Fargo State College." And she said, "Well, you're supposed to be in Los Angeles." I said, "Why? Why would I be in Los Angeles?" She said, "We sent you a ticket." I said, "I never got any tickets." She said, "We sent it to the Improv." I wasn't at the Improv. I was on the road. So she says, "Get to Fargo Airport, get a ticket. I'm getting you a ticket, first class, to go to Los Angeles." I got to Fargo. I said to Michael J. Fox, "Pull over to the airport." That's in the days when you could pull over to the airport. "I just want to see if there's a ticket." There was a ticket. I said to Michael, I said, "I think I'm getting off the tour. I'm going to just go do this thing." And that's when I met Landsberg and everything at the airport. I get to the Farmer's Daughter Motel, which Bob knows because he worked on CBS over on whatever, which is on Fairfax. I get there, we do 4 sets, we get back in 4 comedy sets that night. I get back to the hotel, I'm sleeping at 10 o'clock. Phone call, "This is J.D. Joe." I said, "Yeah, that's what he wants." She says, "We're doing a line reading." "It's a line reading for what?" She says, "You're on a TV show." I said, "Okay." So I walk over, she says, "Do you have the lines down?" I said, "I didn't see any lines." She says, "We left a script for you." I said, "For what?" I said, "For this TV show that you're on." So they gave me the script. I looked at the script and I said, "Okay." So we're doing a line reading, and Norman Lear, who I had no idea who he was. Norman, because I work nights, so I don't see All in the Family and this kind of stuff. So Norman Lear is sitting next to me. The script reading's like this. Everybody's like this or whatever. So they would do a line and go, and we're going to the house, and everybody at the table, were the writers, the producers, they started laughing. Ah! And I look over and I go, "This sucks. What is everybody laughing about?" And I'm sitting next to Norman Lear, and I said to Norman Lear, "Man, this stuff is garbage. Who's doing this?" And Norman Lear looks at me, doesn't say anything. We finish the line reading. Alan Mannings, who's our executive producer, comes over. He says, "I heard you had some problems with our script." I said, "Well, whatever it is not funny." He says, "You know, a lot of people work very hard on this. And if you have a problem, you come to the producer." He said, "You don't spit out loud that you don't like it." So from then on, I learned that you're supposed to go quietly to a corner with somebody and say you don't like it. And that's what happened. That's how I got on the show. But I wasn't supposed to be on the show. I was just there as a fifth player because the stars obviously were Esther, John, and Janae. And then Ralph, who played my brother, had won 4 Tonys on Broadway. And this is another story quickly. They couldn't get Ralph because they were trying to get him out of a show called Raisin. It was a big musical. Yeah, Raisin for all those who know. And he was a big star because he was a little kid and they just thought he was sensational. They couldn't get him. So they were fighting, trying to change money. In the meanwhile, they got a kid to take his place during rehearsals. And they told the kid, look, we're going to get Ralph Carter no matter what. You are just filling in. So don't think you have this show because you don't have it. It's going to be Ralph's show. You just need a body. So we waited like 3 weeks for Ralph. This guy was doing the show, and the day before we were supposed to actually do it, they finally got Ralph. And they eliminated this guy who thought he had the show because it took so long. And the guy who played Ralph's part and didn't get the show was Larry Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne. And I said, whenever I see Lawrence at the gym, I said, do you know how your life would be totally different if you would have gotten our show? And he says, you know, I don't even remember that, man, because from there, he went on to do Pee-wee's Playhouse, and then he did the war movie. What was the name of that movie?
Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, that movie. He did that movie, and he won whatever the devil you win, and he won and at that time, when he was doing Ralph's part, he was homeless. Yeah, he said, I'm going to be an actor, and his parents said, no, you're not. And he says, I'm leaving, because I'm going to be an actor. And he was like 16 or 17, and well, needless to say, he's got a house bigger than this hotel now. And he's won Academy Awards, and every other movie that comes out, Lawrence Fishburne is in it. So that's my story. That's what happened. Go ahead.
Going back to Bob for a second, you started as a disc jockey. How did you get into all this?
Yeah, I started as a disc jockey at a 250-watt radio station in Oxnard, California. 200 watts went into the ocean and 50 watts went to the cemetery next door. I wanted to do what the big guys did. So I went to the owner of the station. I said, I want to have a rock and roll album giveaway contest. He said, well, go ahead, but you're not going to get any albums from us. So I had to buy the stupid albums. And I went on the air, and I must have mentioned it 150 times, big rock and roll album giveaway contest. And finally, I said, it's time. I said, I'll give them to, and I couldn't think of it clever, I'll give them to the first person that calls. And nobody called. So I made up a name, and took the stupid albums home. But then I was a disc jockey at the hot news station in town, KRLA, and I was there with the big guys. I was there with Casey Kasem and Dick Biondi and Wink Martindale and all of those people, and then there's little Bob Eubanks from Oxnard. And so from there, there was a big nightclub in New York called Peppermint Lounge. And Joey Pesci, Joe Pesci was the guitar player. And they had a hit record, Twist. So I decided I wanted to open one of those. So we opened a young adult nightclub, and we ended up with 4 of them before it was over. And on Wednesday night was talent night, and I bought some talent from them. And so when the Beatles came along, I was a disc jockey, and I also was a talent buyer, and that kind of helped me get through all of this. And that's how my concert career started, really. But I've been very fortunate, I've been very lucky, and it's a wonderful business. I never would discourage anybody from being in our business. There's just a place for everybody, and that's basically what I found out.
So when did the newlywed game come into play with all of this? So those are kind of not too different, but different categories.
I was at our radio station. We had a basketball team, and we would invite celebs to play on our basketball team. And one night we were playing, and I asked this guy, I said, who's your agent? He says, well, it's Abrams Rubloff. And my friend Charlie O'Donnell, who was a disc jockey, said, well, you can't sign with Abrams Rubloff. They're a big agency. And I bet him $5 I could sign. So I went to meet Chuck Barris, and he said he had a new game coming along and it's a newlywed game, and he had the dating game on the air at the time. And God, I didn't know anything about it. But anyway, I tried out for it, and son of a gun, I got it. And so we did the run through without cameras for the big guys from New York. They came out to New York, and I had 4 couples, and the couple number 1 was an unknown comedian named Dom DeLuise and his wife Carol. But let me tell you, and this is a true story. And back in '66, television was pretty quiet. But what sold the show was there was a cute little blonde girl down at the end, and I said, what's your favorite nickname for your husband? She said, Numbnuts. And the ABC guys got up, went upstairs, and bought the newlywed game without a pilot. All based on Numbnuts.
Without a pilot.
No pilot. And, and I was so frightened. The first day we did the show, I was standing in the dressing room. I said, God, you got to help me. You have to help me. And at that time, there was a big deal going on with radio about payola and all that, disc jockeys taking money to play records. So I'm saying, please, Lord, help me. I don't know what I'm doing. And there's a knock on the door. And I open the door, and this is 30 seconds before I went out to do the first show. And I open the door, here stands 2 guys in suits. He said, Bob? I said, yeah. He said, you're hereby ordered to appear before the United States Government Anti-Payola Committee, and you damn sure better be there. I was served a felony thing 30 seconds before I went out to do the newlywed game. And Chuck Barris came to me after the first show, and he said, Bobby, we got to talk. I said, what's the matter, man? He says, you've done something I've never seen anybody do before. I said, what did I do? He said, you went a half hour without blinking. And that was the beginning.
What a journey it's been. Jamie, so your character, Klinger, obviously, is one of the most iconic characters in television sitcom history. You were the first character to basically cross-dress and play it straight. But at first, when you were cast, they wanted you to have more of a nuance, shall we say. But was it your idea to play it that way?
Yes. Well, actually, I had not seen the movie, and as Jimmie Walker will say to you and said to you and as Bob, in this business, as Bob Hope used to say, one day you're eating the chicken and the next day you're plucking the feathers. So I was plucking the feathers at that particular time. And Gene Reynolds, I had done a show with him, and it was an F troupe. And I was a stand-up comic Indian that was auditioning for the Cowie tribe. And they gave me all the terrible, one-liner jokes. Instead of take my wife, please, take my squaw, please. And so he liked me, and he wrote my name in a book if he liked somebody. And when this character came up, they called my agent. And they said, hey, Gene Reynolds wants you to be in this new television series that they have, and it's called MASH. And I said, I don't know anything about it. I hadn't seen the movie or anything. I said, what kind of a part is it? He says, well, they'll tell you when you get there. It pays $250 for the date. And like Jimmie Walker said, I'll take it, $250 for the date. So I come and he takes me into the dressing room, and there's this woman's Army Corps uniform hanging up, and these huge, gigantic high heels. And I said, oh, am I dressing with an actress? He says, no, those are yours, put them on. I said, what the hell kind of part is this? I didn't even see the script or anything. So I put him on, I got the hairy bowed legs, and Gene is starting to laugh, and he said, come on in, I'm taking you into the studio. So they take me in, and craft services, and all the actors and actresses, Loretta, everybody starts laughing and so forth. I said, okay, what is he doing? He said, just a guy trying to get out of the Army. Well, they had me kind of playing it a little, the director, believe this or not, his name was E.W. Swackhammer. That was the director's name. So he had me playing, remember, you remember E.W. Swack? Yeah. And so he had me kind of playing it the Faye-like in that. And I said, oh, okay, I didn't know. Cyril Book was the general that came out. He said, oh, Corporal Klinger's still trying to get out of the Army. I said, well, I'll just keep trying, Mary, you know, wearing a dress. And I skip off into the night. Well, they saw the dailies the next day, and I got a telephone call from my agent and said, you know, Jamie, Gene Reynolds and Larry Gelbart saw it. They said they can't want to do it that way. So they said, you got to do a retake, and that's always terrible. I said, oh my goodness, I failed Gene Reynolds, I failed Larry Gelbart. So they said, hey, how can we do this? I said, look, why doesn't you let everybody else make comments about him and just play it straight? Like he has a cigar and he talks like this and he doesn't anything. He said, okay, try it. So I tried it. And Loretta was right. I came on for 2 days, and I stayed for 11 years. And I'll tell you something in this business. This is my 70th year in this stupid business, as Jimmie Walker will tell you. My first movie, Sidney Poitier, and brought Rock Around the Clock, and actually brought rock and roll into the world with Bill Haley and the Cutters. I had so many wonderful opportunities in my career, and I've also had terrible times. This is my favorite story. Mike doing funny things? Are they laughing? If I may say, this is my favorite story. I told this, I wrote it in my book. It was a really bad time for me in my career. And I was very, very desperate. And I remembered that Danny Thomas, who's from Toledo, Ohio, just as I am, and is Lebanese, had gone to church in Chicago to pray to St. Jude. St. Jude, the saint of the hopeless. Yeah, and he said to him, if you just help me, I'll build a shrine for you. And of course, Danny, as you all know, became so very famous, and he built St. Jude Hospital. So this was a very tough time for me. And there was a movie called The Greatest Story Ever Told that was going to be done. And I hadn't worked in a long, long time. I was really broke. I'd run out of unemployment and everything else. And I kept saying to my agent, you know, with this face, there's got to be something in this movie, The Greatest Story Ever Told, the biblical picture. He says, Jamie, you're known for comedy. You can't. He said, did you ever do anything serious? I said, yeah, I did a Rebel episode with Nick Adams. He says, get that, and George Stevens, the great director, will take a look at it. So I took it over to George Stevens, and I went into this little Catholic church. I'm not Catholic, I'm Eastern Orthodox, and I found St. Jude, and I said, St. Jude. I'm Lebanese. You know, remember Danny Thomas, who promised to you that if you did something for him, he'd build a shrine? I said, I can't build a shrine for you, but I'll do something, you know, for you. I gotta have this part in this movie. You gotta make, and I light a candle. I only had 25 cents, and I put it in there. So I go, and my agent calls. He says, Jamie, pick up your film. And unfortunately, there's nothing in the movie for you. So I go pick up the movie, I give it back to Nick Adams, and I go back and I tell St. Jude off. I said, what am I supposed to do? You know, sell cars, wash dishes, and I'm not lighting a candle, and I'm not putting another quarter in, and I walked out of there. I come home, and I get a phone call from my agent. He says, I don't know what happened, Jamie, but they changed their mind. He says, got you a 26-week guarantee at $450 a week. You're going to be playing one of the apostles in the movie, Nathaniel Bartholomew. Go over to the studio in Culver City and take your wardrobe test. So I go to the studio next to Charlton Heston and Roddy McDowell, all these big names in the movie, talking about how they did these wonderful things in Italy and everything else. And I'm saying, boy, I got out of that unemployment line. I got a job here, $450, 26 weeks. So I took the screen test. You know, you had the robe on and the sandals, and they put a fake beard on you and everything else. So, and I came back to the apartment, and they had looked at the dailies. They wanted to see what you look like with all these things. He says, Jamie, the telephone rings. It's my agent here. He says, no, everything's the same. 26 weeks, $450 a week, but you're not playing Nathaniel Bartholomew. You're playing Thaddeus. I said, Thaddeus. Oh, okay, that's good. So I called my buddy up and I said, hey, I got 26-week guaranteed, $450, and I'm playing the Apostle Thaddeus. He says, you're playing who? I said, Thaddeus. He said, you know what his full name is? I said, no. He says, his full name is St. Jude Thaddeus. I wound up playing the saint I was praying to. My favorite story.